Zach, would you like to introduce yourself? Kind of tell us where you're from, how old you are?
Okay, yeah. Zach Bergman from Forest Lake, Minnesota, just outside a little town called Stacy. 21. I'm a sergeant in the Minnesota National Guard.
Right. And then when did you join the Guard?
I joined in October of 2019.
And then is there any specific reason like why you joined? Is there like motivation?
My dad's been in the Guard for over 25 years now, so I was just following his footsteps.
Yeah. And then what's your job in the National Guard?
I'm what they call a 68 whiskey, so a combat medic.
Okay, and then you recently went on a deployment to Kuwait. When was that? What was kind of the time frame for that?
So we left end of March. So that would have been 2021. And then we just got back in beginning of February this year, 2022.
All right, and then can you tell me what you did over in Kuwait?
So I was a medic attached to a Role 2, so we ran pretty much all sick call operations for the entire battalion that deployed.
You have said that you were treating kind of like the refugees
Yes.
from Kabul. So what was kind of like the system in place to treat them once they came to you?
So the government of Kuwait initially was not going to allow any refugees from Afghanistan to come to the country. After some negotiations, they allowed refugees to come into the country for about a week. So they would arrive on Air Force C-130s at the Air Force base that I'm blanking on the name right now in Kuwait, and the Kuwaiti Army would bus them up to us in Camp Behring. They'd get off the bus and we'd start an in-processing process, which we had a sheet which would pretty much get their names, who their family is, if they have any pre-existing medical conditions, if they speak English. If they don't, we didn't have any interpreters, so we'd have to find people among the refugees that spoke English to help us. So we'd get that initial information, and then they'd be bused to another part of the base to where they'd be staying for that week. And then we also ran a small clinic at where they were staying to treat the families.
Like what did you treat? Like
what do we treat?
Like
so
physical injuries or like illness, sickness, something like that?
Yeah, all of the above. So there would be people would have blisters filled with pus. You'd have to drain that. They would come in with their kids that were sick. You got to remember, these people were living on pretty much an airport runway for like a week before they even got on a plane. They didn't have clean water. The only clothes they had were the clothes on their back. They didn't have a bed to sleep in. They were sleeping on the ground. They didn't have proper food, and they didn't have baby formula. So we were, typical coughs that you see in younger children and babies, and flu-like symptoms, and we got pretty much anything that you see here.
And then, like, how would the refugees respond to you as, like, a medical personnel, like, as you're treating them?
Extremely thankful after we got done treating them.
How many people would you treat in, like, a day on average?
So in our clinic, we had around 500 patients a day for about 12 days straight.
How many, like, medics or doctors do you have with you?
So the shift that I was running, I was 11 p.m. to 11 a.m. We had 1 PA and 3 medics. And the shift that came on from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. generally had 2, a doctor and a PA, and like 6 medics.
So what do you think the perspective of at least the refugees, like before they came to see you or like any other U.S. personnel, and then like after leaving kind of your care?
Okay. So at our clinic, a lot of times, families would come in as a whole, and they'd have their other children with them. So we'd always have these coloring books and stuff for them to color while they waited or whatever. And we would always take their picture, those colorings, and we'd hang them up on the wall that we had at the clinic. And there was a few, maybe if there was a slow moment where we didn't have some patients, for like half hour or something, sometimes the interpreters would just draw something, and they would always, some of the older kids, you know, like 8 years old or whatever, that could draw kind of decent, or some of the interpreters, they'd always draw these drawings of like what their house was. And they made these drawings and they'd label it like My Beautiful Home or My House in Afghanistan or whatever like that. So these people, they loved where they lived. You could tell that. They didn't want to leave, but they had to due to their circumstances.
How would you say that like the healthcare, at least from like the U.S. and U.S. military, was different from like at least Afghani healthcare and what they were used to?
Okay, yep. So in Afghanistan, there are doctors there who go to school for maybe 2 years, and then it's on-the-job training. So also, there are pharmacies in Afghanistan. You don't need a prescription to get anything. You just walk in and get whatever you want, and that includes things like morphine and Dilaudid and stuff like that.
So do you kind of know how day-to-day life was for the refugees, or is your interaction just kind of solely in that clinical environment?
It was pretty much solely in that clinical environment. I mean, they were only allowed to be in their little tent city area, so it was just a bunch of tents that were constructed extremely fast and kind of split up into family apartments almost. So if you can picture like a big round tent that's really long and just plywood dividers in it. So I mean, you'd walk outside, have, you know, a smoke or something, and, you know, the kids would all be running around playing soccer, tag, or whatever kids do. I mean, the next to our clinic was the tent that housed a whole bunch of hygiene supplies, diapers, clothing, toothbrushes, stuff like that, shampoo. So when that opened, there'd always be a long line there for people to get stuff.
With that, what was kind of like mood when you were interacting with them, or like even in their kind of camp? Are they all still pretty like hopeful, happy, or and then like some of them are kind of depressed almost?
Definitely exhausted. Everybody was super exhausted and tired, and they weren't even halfway done with traveling. Like I said, a lot of the interpreters we had were super cheery, hopeful, friendly, fun to talk to, be around. But the majority of the patients that we would see and their family, a lot of it just brought down to they were exhausted, they were extremely tired. They, you know, hadn't had a bed to sleep in the past who knows how long. Haven't had facilities to shower, really even go to the bathroom, or, you know, the proper amount of food. So these people were just exhausted, dirty, hungry, thirsty. That was kind of the main attitude of them at that point.
Thank you, Zach, for coming. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, no problem. Pleasure to be here.